Hi guys, Mackenzie of Pinpoint Event Planning, and today's video is the second step in your wedding planning process. So that step is picking your venue. Picking your venue is a lot of fun. Going around to all of those gorgeous places is just a blast. So that in itself is awesome. But there are a lot of things that you need to be looking for when you are looking for your venue. You don't want to go all willy-nilly and go buy a venue right off the bat. That's how you'll get in trouble with your budget or cause headaches for yourself later on down the road. So just be careful and look out for all these things when you're looking at your venue. The number one thing that you're going to want to look at is make sure that the capacity is appropriate for your guest list. That's why you made your guest list first. So make sure your capacity of the venue is appropriate. You don't want a venue that's too big. If you have a venue that seats 300 and your wedding's only 75, it's going to feel empty in that venue on your wedding day. So definitely don't pick too big of a venue. The other thing is to make sure that your venue is not too small. That may seem like a no-brainer, but bear with me. You do not want to pick a venue that has a capacity of 200 if your guest list is 200. You will be praying that people say no, because 8 months from now, when you are actually at your wedding, or a year, whatever, you may have forgotten to invite somebody on that guest list. So you'll be like, oh, we'll send them an invite. We'll send them an invite. So don't put yourself in that position. The other thing that you need to be checking is make sure that the capacity that your venue is listing as their maximum capacity is the capacity of how that venue will be set up for your wedding. And what I mean by that is if you are planning on having a reception with a dance floor and a buffet table, ask them what the maximum capacity is for a seated dinner and a dance floor. A lot of times venues will list 200 as their maximum capacity, but what they don't tell you is that 200 capacity is for cocktail hour or for a conference where everybody's seated in rows. So just ask your venue, hey, what's your maximum capacity for a seated dinner and a dance floor? If you are kind of pushing it, if you have, say, 185 for your guest list and the venue holds 200, you might want to ask them. If they say, yeah, we will hold 200 for a seated dinner and a dance floor, the closer that you get to that 200 number, you may be eating into the floor space of your dance floor. So just keep that in mind. The other thing that you're going to want to consider is the space big enough in terms of, are you going to have your ceremony there? If they have another room for your ceremony, make sure that the ceremony room is big enough for the anticipated guest list, which it should. The other thing that you're going to want to make sure is if, say, the space for your ceremony is outside, make sure you're okay with the backup plan at that venue. If it is raining on your wedding day, what's their plan? Do they have everybody move inside? Most of the time, venues will have your wedding moved inside, but your guest list will have to be seated at their tables. So if that's a plan that you're not okay with, like 100%, you do not want people at the tables during your wedding ceremony, then you need to be kind of considering your other options. Another thing to consider is if you're planning on getting married in the exact same space as your reception, and that's going to require a room flip, make sure that the place is big enough. Ask the venue, what is the maximum capacity to do a room flip? And hopefully they will tell you, it's the maximum capacity. But there are some cases where the venues just aren't big enough to have the guests kind of move out of the way so the room flip can happen. So make sure that your venue is big enough in those terms as well. The other thing that you're going to want to be looking at, which is usually the first thing that people look at, is make sure your venue is in budget. That may seem obvious, but make sure it is in budget, point blank in budget, and then make sure that you're also allowing for sales tax. Most venues will charge you a sales tax, so make sure you're budgeting that in for that venue when you're thinking of that venue's costs. The other thing is, don't rule out a pricier venue just because of, the price. You need to be looking at what all these venues are including. A lot of venues will include tables and chairs and setup and tear down and linens, and some may even include half your decoration. So you need to really compare what the venues will include before you can, accurately compare this venue versus that venue. If your venue does not include anything, if it's linens or they don't include chairs, everything they don't include, you're going to have to then go out and rent for your wedding. So that's going to be an added cost. So make sure you're factoring that in. Everything that your venue doesn't have, you also need to make sure that you have enough left over in your venue budget to go out and get those things that you need, like your tables and your chairs and your linens. So just be thinking about all that when you're looking at the venues. And if you follow those rules, your wedding planning is going to be so much easier. If you follow those rules, you will just make it so much easier on yourself, and planning will go a lot smoother because you've just dodged about 80% of problems that weddings usually run into. So definitely be considerate when you're looking at your venue of the capacity and the budget, and then also your backup plan if you do get married there. The other thing and last thing that I want to tell you when you go to look at venues is try not to have a specific date in mind. A lot of times brides say, oh, what date do you want to get married? Oh, I think 7/7/27 sounds great. Let's do that day. Most of the venues will book years in advance. So if you are having a specific date in mind, you may need to consider more venues. You might have to go out and find other venues that maybe weren't on your list, because so many venues do book out that far in advance. A lot of times what brides don't realize is how you pick your date is a lot of times how you've picked your venue and what they have available. So just kind of be aware of that when you go in. That way you're not totally upset like, what? You don't have 7/7/27? That's my day. So just make sure that you kind of have that in the back of your mind, that a lot of times you're going to have to kind of settle for a date that they have open if that's the venue that works for you. The last thing that I want to say is, I guess there's two things. Last thing that I want to say is make sure you are doing your homework with these venues, and don't get discouraged if you don't find it right off the bat. There are so many venues, literally new ones opening up every day. So just keep looking. You'll find the one that works for you. Even if you say, oh, there's no venues that the style I'm going for, there probably are. Just don't give up and keep looking. There's plenty of venues out there for you to find one that will work for you in your wedding. The last thing is drink a glass of wine, because that's the best part of wedding planning. So, all right, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'm going to go finish my glass of wine now because it's been a long day thanks to daylight saving time. So enjoy, and I will post a new video soon, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. All right, guys.